Alrighty, and welcome to another episode of the Primer Podcast. My name's William.
And this is Davis.
And we are up in Pomona in the garage of...
Colby Martin.
How you doing, Colby?
I'm real good. Thanks for coming out, guys.
Pleasure. So, Colby, you work for SEMA Sands.
I do. I work for SEMA, the Specialty Equipment Market Association. And for the last a little over 2 years, I've been the director of the SEMA Action Network, which hopefully all your listeners have at least heard of. Well, hopefully after this, they'll be a part of our army.
Okay. Well, what specifically does the SEMA Action Network do?
Perfect. We are monitoring all the laws so that everybody out there doesn't have to. So all of the bills and laws and proposals that are going to affect guys that are into specialty vehicles like we are, whether they're new or old, whether they're modified or stock, we support all of that. And we're taking a look at all of the proposals all around the country, all 50 states and Canada most recently, and making sure that those laws are good for us. And when they're not, then we let our lawmakers know. And if they are, we let them know that too. Because after all, we elected them, we can elect them out of office.
Okay. So how do you actually go about doing this? I mean, are you like constantly on the computer, on the phone? I mean, how do you keep track of like 50 states?
Absolutely. Well, I'm lucky that I get to be the gearhead of the bunch. I get to be out here in sunny Southern California while our lobbyists are over in Washington, D.C., taking a look at all of the states and both the federal legislation and regulations. So for the last 15 plus years, SEMA has had this government affairs operation over on the right coast to make sure that things are going for us. And obviously, the SAN is only one component of what SEMA does. Most people will think, is that the same SEMA as the SEMA show? And it absolutely is. The show is one component. The SAN is one component. SEMA has all of these different branches as part of its tree to try to make sure that our industry has a hopeful future. And the Government Affairs Division, specifically the SAN, is one of those items that makes sure that our freedoms are being protected as much as possible. So to answer your question, we've got guys that are trained lobbyists that are wearing the suit and ties and mingling with all of our lawmakers and their staff. They're going to the Hill. They're making connections where those connections are best going to help us. And they do their job extremely well. If you look at our track record, there's a lot more successes than failures. But that's not happened overnight. There was a point where I'm sure you guys remember, the government's out to get us. Well, the government's not out to get us anymore, and that's because we've done the hard work and gone in there and figured out level-headed strategies to make sure that they understand how much economy we contribute by being involved with tinkering with cars and trucks. And over the last 15 plus years, we've been able to make a sizable impact on how they legislate, what they legislate, and why they legislate.
Wow. What are some of the, say, major accomplishments, as far as, what are some of the big ones, some of the ones that you remember?
Well, I've only been a part of the team for a little over 2 years, so my being in the heart of it is a little bit amateur, I would say. However, it's been long enough to sort of see things happen, and I'll give you a good example. Maryland is a state that is kind of hard on classic car enthusiasts. One proposal after another have led to sort of restricting the rights of folks to be able to go out and enjoy their cars on a Sunday or a Saturday and drive them to car shows and stuff. You hear about all the different ways you can register your vehicle, and they've got collector plates in some states, specialty vehicle plates in others, historic, antique, you name it, there's a moniker for it. And a couple of times Maryland has proposed things that would further limit folks that enjoy driving classic cars on the weekends. And you think, why would they do that? What is in it for them to restrict our ability to take this car we hardly ever use and further limit its use? one of the reasons that folks get those plates is because they offer certain incentives. Usually they're a little cheaper. You can register your car a little bit cheaper if you have one of these specialty plates, as opposed to a normal plate that goes on any commuter car, commercial vehicle, what have you. A specialty plate usually has a good incentive attached to it. Well, the state has in the past attempted to limit that use, and typically these classic vehicles are only relegated as collector cars. They are something that is only used occasionally. Their insurance is generally lower, and you're not going to be driving that to and from work every day. And as a result, the state realizes that. But the good example that I have is there was this bogus piece of legislation introduced in the state 2 years ago, and it essentially tried to limit that use. And we made it a feature story in our Driving Force newsletter, used the artwork of Tom Fritz, who's also a friend of mine, to kind of illustrate the fact that us using our classic cars, yes, they may be gas guzzlers, yes, they may be slightly more unsafe by today's standards, but does that mean that we need to outlaw them and enact legislation that is going to effectively limit us enjoying them? How many people go to a car show just willy-nilly and don't appreciate what that American vintage iron was, or that vintage British iron, or you name it, and you see it at a car show? And I think that really limiting us to be able to enjoy that part of the hobby is absolutely ludicrous. And thankfully the guys I work with feel the same. So basically what that comes down to is us making a call to the legislature. Often we'll find out who's sponsoring the bill, and we'll have a phone conversation with them and say, look, what is your goal with this? What can we do to make this thing friendly to car enthusiasts rather than a hindrance of celebrating this American heritage? And so that's what we do in cases like that. And more often than not, the bill's sponsor is just a little bit misguided. He doesn't know that he's impacting us in a negative way. He thought about it in one circumstance, we're coming at him with another. And so rather than taking up the torches and essentially burning the Capitol down, we work with them instead of against them. And that has been a very good method of getting things done. So that one strikes me because it was early on in my tenure with the SAN. And to be able to take this bogus piece of legislation, we were able to recraft it with very simple language into something that actually expanded their use of the vehicles. And you think, how many in our hot rod community would believe that until it happens? And that's one of those that is near and dear to me, because we worked with the enthusiasts. We told them, here's the language, here's what they're looking to do. What would we do? What do we ultimately want? What would we like this to say? And then we can work with them. And between the enthusiasts getting upset and us making a calculated call, all of a sudden now you have a solution that works for everybody.
Nice. Who started this? You mentioned something like 15 years ago. I mean, did it start off with a couple guys in their garage saying, this is BS, we got to fight these guys, probably over some piece of smog equipment or something? How did it start?
So SEMA has a long history of dealing with governmental issues like this, and one of the first was when they started implementing the CARB program that we know today.
Oh, yeah.
And all of the smog regulations.
Yeah.
Essentially, all of that stuff starts here in our fair state.
Right.
And then it kind of works its way to the East Coast, and then somewhere in the middle, it all gelatinizes. So back in the mid to late 1960s, they started regulating and figuring out how they were going to cause the smog problem. Because let's be honest, I've heard so many stories from folks older than myself, including my family, that used to not be able to see the foothills right here where I grew up.
Right.
Because the smog was so bad. So obviously the cars were cool, things were great, the music was good, but there was a significant problem, and we've had to figure out ways of mitigating that. Because let's be honest, the folks today like us that take pride in restoring and using resources on these vintage vehicles, that wasn't everybody at the time. And a lot of those cool cars that are cool today were Squaresville back then, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
So it was time to figure out how we make commuter cars a little bit less unhealthy for the environment while still allowing us to enjoy our performance and our restyling and everything that we do. So that's when SEMA had to get involved. And essentially, one of our Hall of Famers, he was just inducted and unfortunately passed away just recently. His name was Eric Grant, and he worked very closely with the agencies that became CARB very early on. And he was not a gearhead himself, but he was somebody that understood what SEMA was trying to do, which was keep all these guys in business so that we could then enjoy the company of their business, right? We all buy from the industry. So his goal was to make sure that the industry would continue to stay in existence, because the legislation they were trying to enact at the time was really contradictory to what we have now. It was very much anti-hot rod, anti-custom, anti-everything that we have fun with. They were not having that. So the discussion started with the state of California, between them and SEMA. And from all of that interaction, we were able to not only keep the industry alive, but start enacting legalese, if you will, that would essentially protect the future of everything we enjoy today. So they were really laying the keystones of what we now come to enjoy as far as restoration, backyards, shops or otherwise. And I think we all owe them a bit of gratitude for really standing up to an organization that you really didn't mess with. And that's how SEMA got kind of its start. I mean, this was before the SEMA show. One of our major things that early on was not only the government stuff, but it was also licensing and trademark, and it was also with regards to safety in motor racing. You think of the approval and testing of products, that also didn't exist back in the early 60s. So when SEMA was founded in 63, that became a huge concern of the groups was, why do we need to get together? Well, we need to get together because we can't fight these battles alone. We do not have the resources as small businesses. You think of Deist and Iskandarian and Elbrock and all these legendary brands. They all came together because they had one major concern. We need to continue to be able to race in NASCAR, race in NHRA, and have these sanctioning bodies, essentially trust what we are producing. And that became one of our early battles. So this government thing sort of came about at a critical time in the development of everything that we know as the industry now.
Interesting.
How many members does SEMA have?
So in the last 10 years that I've been with the association, it usually hovers between 5,000 and 7,000 member companies. A member is defined as a company. So anybody that works for one of the brands I just mentioned, or any of our other members, every person in that company is considered a member. And I've always thought that was really cool. Even if you're just the lowly guy sweeping the floors, you get to say you're a SEMA member. And that's what we started out as, was serving the businesses, and that's what we continue today as. The great thing is that over time, the association finds these great little niches that aren't currently being served. And that's why when we talk about the 15 years ago, the government affairs division of us was also very small. But they realized, one person can't monitor everything at the state and federal level if you're going to do a good job.
That's huge.
So to sort of tie it into the last question, that's really where it developed, is the association is doing well, the industry is doing well, and it's grown. Why don't we shift a little bit more resources at having a permanent spot in DC that essentially becomes the heartbeat and the monitoring of everything that's happening in the country? And that's really where it began. So we grow a department, and it has more and more folks that are in charge of more and more specific things. My job is to let the enthusiasts know. And I'm sitting here with you guys today because that's my job. My job is to make sure that everybody out there knows as much as possible what's going on in their state. And that's why we're doing this. You know, we didn't always have that body as part of SEMA, but luckily, as things continue to go well and we win these battles, we also are winning the war. And that's why it's more critical than ever that we not stop that momentum. The momentum is what's going to keep us going into the future.
So as far as momentum and us small car collectors, hot rodders, and muscle car enthusiasts, we do have a voice.
Absolutely.
And rather than just writing a letter and putting it in the mailbox and maybe my congressman will read it or not, actually signing up with SEMA and getting information about my local congressman is there, and it's free, and it gives the enthusiast a voice that hopefully is, you see a better result rather than just, you know, like you said, no organization, no nothing, and you're presenting information about what's coming up, what it could affect us, and yet we have a voice, and it's easy to do.
Right, and my hope is that it's not only responsible, but that it can also be fun. Because growing up in this, I know just as much as everybody else that this is all about fun. We don't, you know, bruise our knuckles and, you know, have to deal with, you know, nagging family members that why are we spending so much time in that darn garage working on this rusty Hulk? There's a lot of fun to this, and that I think translates over into what I do very nicely. It's just one of those things that typically hasn't been associated together, but I'm hoping to change that, and I think that you guys are hoping to change that. There are so many opportunities for us to be better stewards of the hobby and to be ambassadors to a part of American heritage that I think very few industries and fewer hobbies really can claim. The reason being is if you look at any trade association, to pick any industry that you might work in, look at the trade association that represents them and look at the hallmark of that trade association. There's few that can say, well, the SEMA show is ours. What are you doing? The SEMA show is like being a kid in a candy store if you're into cars.
Oh, yeah. Craziness going on out there.
And how many industries have a trade show, and I'll put that in air quotes, because every association has one. Mm-hmm. But think about going to the crocheting trade show. Think about going to the, you know, hot dog and tubed meat trade show. I can't imagine what those floors are like, and I can't imagine the kind of buzz or lack thereof that they have. And that's because we come from a really genuinely fun industry and a fun hobby that supports that industry. So by tying up the government part of it, now we can really do some damage. And as I hope I've already sort of made clear notice of, we are doing that. You know, we don't just have to tinker and curse in our garages for various things. We can actually do something about it. And I think that based on what we've already talked about off air, there's so many opportunities to use the new technology that we have and maximize it. I mean, there's no better time to really truly learn what the solutions are and do something about them. And I think that that's why things like the internet are a great thing. You know, we send out an email, for example, when something's going down in the state. Hey, Utah, look out. This is what your state government, or look out, this is what your state wants to do. It doesn't always have to be bad, but nonetheless, we give the digest about it. You know, the guys I work with take very close consideration in what this bill is, why it affects us hobbyists, and what we can do about it. And we essentially siphon out all of the matters that are important to us as enthusiasts, give you a very simple bullet-pointed digest via email, and then say, here's who you need to contact.
Right.
We give you the email, we
Right.
give you the phone number, we give you the name. If that's not having a voice, I don't know what is. We're not telling you what to do, we're just telling you how to do it.
Very easily.
Very easily.
Right.
And so far, that method has been very effective because the ratio of losses versus wins has completely teetered. But the one case in point is we cannot stand on the sidelines and just let these things go unattended.
So
yeah,
how do you get on this email list?
It's very simple. So you go to semasan.com, SEMASAN.com, and you sign up. And with the new website reskinning we're in the process of right now, which will hopefully be launched within a week or two, it's going to be very easy to notice that we need you to enlist. And not only is it easy to enlist because there's a button to say so, all we want is your name, your state, and your car club affiliation if you have one. And the most critical part is that email address, because that's how we get the word out. It's so effective to send an email with these copy and pastable bullet points that you can use to craft your own personalized message that it just is bar none simple. And we're always looking for that. And anything that we build, anything that we create, you want it simple. So you sign up on the email list, and we're not going to sell your name. We're not going to try to bait you into buying anything. We're not going to try to take anything from you, because what we need from you is to speak up. Because there's so many thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of Americans out there that don't realize that they're toiling and cursing away in the garages, but they could be having an impact very quickly in their state, simply by getting that message and responding to it. Because the great thing is that there's public hearings. Imagine that. Democracy allows us to participate in our government. They enjoy and want our participation.
So you guys are, I know they have a lot of these public hearings and stuff at perfect hours of the days of the week at like 9 and 10 a.m. when us working folk have to be somewhere. SEMA is there. Somebody's taking care of that.
And not only that, it's SEMA's not there. SEMA's Action Network is there.
Gotcha.
Our Army is there. They don't want to hear from the trade association. They want to hear from you, the voters. That's who they want to hear from.
Right.
So when we send out that alert, we also give you the option, if we feel like we need representation, we also say, here's where the hearing is going to be, when it is going to be, and what it is about. So all of us working stiffs that are out there trying to make a coin, there's a lot of folks that are retired already. And guess what? They are more than willing and happy to support our cause for us, representing all of us. So it's not SEMA doing it. It's you all doing it. The problem is that there's not enough of you all doing it. And that's what we need. SEMA can only do so much.
Right.
But when we tell the lawmaker in a state, for example, the Maryland case I gave earlier, hey, you just heard from how many of us that are your voters in your district about this one particular bill. We can call off the dogs, and not only that, but we can turn those angry dogs into very happy dogs that will support you. You will get the same amount of emails in support of by simply amending your language to benefit us, and it's a wonderful thing. Because we can negotiate these things on our end, but we need the grassroots support from all the enthusiasts out there. So that's why the cause is so important.
Okay. So, obviously, I'm from California. Let's say there's something going on in Massachusetts that doesn't affect me at all, but it just gets my goat, fires me up. Is that going to be effective if I'm from California going into another state?
Well,
or would I be better off just sticking to stuff in California because I vote in California?
Well, let's see. How many Facebook friends do you have?
Okay.
So take the information that we give every other week in our email digest. We call it our driving force online. And when you see those headlines, it's very easy to share them. In fact, I know I can think of a couple of forums right now that, given any issue, would love to have someone post that information on that forum and start a new thread. It may not relate to you specifically in a geographic way, but you can be darn sure that it does somewhere else and someone else. So by simply sharing the information and having a solution for it, we are at no greater a time to get the word out about these things.
All right.
So when you get fired up, that's a good thing. Take action on it. Do your part and share it with your email network if you have one. Post it to Facebook. Share it with your friends. Go post it on a forum. There's so many ways.
Put it on a
we can get the word
podcast.
out there. Exactly. Put it on a podcast.
There
So
you go.
there's so many ways now to take the advantage of technology and really protect the future of everything we invest in. And that's why it's just really a pleasure, to talk with you guys and have these kinds of conversations, because, it's really not that tough. There's going to be folks in Massachusetts that are going to be fired up as well. The problem is that they're probably not maximizing their full potential and using their voice as a voter, and that's what we need them to do if we all want our hobby to sustain. Because let's face it, what happens in California can easily happen in Massachusetts, and then it can go to Illinois, then it can go to New Mexico, and soon enough it can go to Canada. So these lawmakers get ideas, they share ideas, just like we do. We learn how to build better cars because we network really well. Well, the lawmakers do the same. So as the lawmakers are convening, it's very easy for one bill's language to be translated and enacted into law somewhere else. We are going to make sure that our voices are heard before they're enacted into law. And that's what's great about the SAM, is that it is that middleman that is going to get in there and let everybody in that state know. The problem is that we've only got about 70,000 individuals. And across 50 states in Canada, I don't feel like that's nearly enough. So that's why I'm on a mission to try to make sure that we not only bump up that number, but we also bump up the engagement. Because sometimes we send out these alerts and nobody responds that we know of. And I think that's the other critical side of this, is you can have a lot of email addresses, but what good are they if no one's going to read them? And I'm the first proponent of hitting that unsubscribe button on a spam mail. I'm the very first person that will disjoin anything. The problem is that there are good emails out there, and this is one of them, because we don't want to talk to you till we need to talk to you, because you've got enough going on.
True.
You're getting
True.
enough email, you're getting enough messages. We don't want to talk to you until it's critical. But that driving force online is super cool because it's very simple. It's a very quick read, and you're only going to get the detail if you want to read more. It's all posted online. People can go to the website anytime and check this stuff out. We merely want to let you know that it's there. And when there's an opportunity to get fired up, why don't we fire up the appropriate people, and those folks can then take action themselves. But without having that email address, you don't have that direct communication, and that, I think, is the most critical part.
And you are the voice behind the phrase "Ignited We Stand," correct?
Yes, I can proudly claim that.
As you sit in front of your banner,
That's right.
the banner you designed,
That's right.
and the logo we've seen everywhere. So a little bit about that. You said that you started out in creative media, creative arts, before you got into SEMA itself.
Well, that's another passion that's probably not going to leave anytime soon.
There you go.
Yeah, I always admired folks like Tom Taylor and Chip Foose, and Tom Fritz, and all the super talented designers, and all the guys that were first drawing the cutaways, in the hot rod magazines back in the early days. Rex Burnett and Gus Manham and all those guys. I'm hugely inspired by all of them, and so growing up, I was probably the kid in the corner that was quiet and drawing flames on notebooks, or giving you a rat fink if you wanted to buy me a candy bar. So thankfully all of that is only translated into what I do now, which is not only being the literal voice of it, but being the figurative voice of it as well. And I'm especially lucky to be able to do that.
So work is not work then?
work is definitely work. It
But,
would,
I mean,
it would
you
be
have-
called play if it wasn't.
But you have the luxury of taking passion and applying something that's creative to something that's effective as far as the hobby and the industry itself. And you're still a gearhead, you're still into cars, so you can. What I'm saying is kind of like going to work it's a good thing. You like what you do, and at the end of the day, you felt good about creating something and putting a dent into something.
Exactly, and I think that that's where my caveat is yes,
Right.
it's work, but there's a lot worse forms of work, and I've held many of them. So to be able to walk into an office where you have a late 1960s Cacklefest dragster going up the wall that the lobby was built around, that's a very special feeling to me. So for the last 10 years, to be able to walk into that office and wear a lot of different hats for many different reasons is absolutely why I continue to be there. So this is the latest in an endeavor that goes way, way back, which is, how can we turn our hobby into a living? And I think that's something that's always struck a chord with me, which is, I'm engulfed in this stuff whether I like it or not. It's something that you cannot shake because it has made such an impact on your soul that you cannot escape it no matter what you try to do. So why don't you take that same passion and energy and channel it into a system that can not only accept it but reward it? And I feel like that's what I've been able to do.
What was that first car that impacted your soul?
The first one that I remember was John Milner's 32 in American Graffiti. So that's the first one I remember. I'm not saying that that's the end-all be-all, but that's the one that I have always gone back to throughout all my years. And so now I'm building a chopped coupe with my dad. It's a 31, but it's got a 32 frame, and it's hoodless, fenderless, just like his car, only a little nastier and a little bit more us. So we've taken the same sort of aesthetic and the same sort of montage of parts, and we are creating our own sculpture, if you will, based on that model.
It's all about proportion.
It really is, yeah. And that, again, that's why I think that having sort of, I guess, a natural tendency to want to draw and paint, that's what I always wanted to do. And that's what I've always done, just because that just feels right for some reason. It always came more naturally to me than a butane torch or, lead. Given your tools, that's what always came natural to me. And so I've taken that and kind of done different things with it, and I've really enjoyed it and still continue to enjoy it. But the bottom line is that every person that builds a car that is not made anymore is an artist. We're all artisans in a sense, because think about all the different skills it requires to put a car together. Whether you're starting one with a dropped axle like I did, and then completely building it from pieces you don't know that you have until you have them, or you're restoring something immaculately to the vision of the craftsman that came before us. There's all a sense of design, and there's all a sense of material, and all of those things interweave together to create this rolling piece of sculpture that we enjoy and largely risk being out on the freeway with, or being in a parking lot, or what have you. And all of those skills come together and form something that really you cannot duplicate. Even if you're restoring something back to factory original, which I completely admire, the fact is that it wasn't that way until you got it. And then you poured a bunch of resources into it and really made it your own. It might be a replica of what the factory did, but 9 times out of 10, you probably did it better than the factory did, because you put your passion, your soul into it. The guy on the assembly line did not. So I think that there's a lot of merit in what we do and what we enjoy, and I think that's why I enjoy the trials, tribulations, and frustrations and victories of what I do at work.
The journey.
The journey.
The journey of the project.
Absolutely. Well, the career is no different.
Right. That's true.
You have phases in your career just like you have phases in a car build. And I think that as long as you've succeeded in them and you continue moving forward, life's good.
Tell us about the truck here.
That is my 58 Ford F100 custom cab that none of you get to look at.
We'll take pictures.
I'm sure you will. You're just not looking at it right now as we speak. That is one of my prides and joys, one of my most favorite objects that I have. It was my grandfather's truck originally. It was purchased by him when it was 4 back in 1962, and my dad first learned how to drive in that thing. And it was stock height, you couldn't see over the roof,
Right.
and it was basically as Ford designed it, with the exception of a couple of things, because my grandfather owned a gas station. You might have heard of Pasadena, and on Lake Avenue, up there on North Lake toward the foothills, he owned a gas service station called Ronnie's Automotive. And for many, many years, it was a Texaco station, and the thing was built, I want to say before the war, because it has a very simple nature to it, but a little bit of Art Deco influence. And I want to think that it was built right before the war. If not, it was right after. And that service station had 3 pumps outside with the old gas globes, and my dad still has those. And it also, because of its heritage, and he was a guy that did not like to see things changed, the facade of the gas station never really left it. But this truck would service all of the broken down cars. So you can imagine this 58 Ford pushing around Cadillac Eldorados and Lincoln Continentals and all those great heavy cars. And this was the service truck for that station. So this truck was outfitted with a wooden push bumper, which meant that that nice chrome bumper on there now without the license plate pocket was put in the rafters forever. And this truck was used day-to-day service. It had god-awful, ugly towing mirrors on the side, and a 292 Y block with a 2-barrel carburetor on the top.
Oh yeah.
Automatic trans and low towing gears, which was cool.
Yeah.
But it basically has been in the family since then. So I'm lucky enough to be the 3rd owner. And when he sold the gas station, he sold me the truck when I was 16. So at that point, I started helping my dad kind of work on it, and we started getting ideas about what we would do. And at the time, you think back to 1998, these cars were not very cool.
No,
No.
you could buy one for $200.
Exactly. Well, I bought mine for $5, but it didn't need everything. It still could run, so that was a pretty good deal. And the fact that it's been in the family for that long, especially with its 1963 license plates,
Yeah.
That stuff is all really cool. But my dad and I, being having the slightly rebellious nature that we do, it was time to make something out of this that was going to be a little bit cool. The only one that we knew of at the time was the Moon Eyes truck that you guys are probably very familiar with. It's a 60 F100, fleet side, and the thing is in 2-tone yellow and white, and it just looks bitchin'. Moon discs on there, and the thing just sits right, and it looks cool. That was our inspiration. So we immediately went about taking on this newfangled rat rod craze that everybody was just kind of getting into. It was a fun time here in Southern California, because finally the anti-perfect, anti-shiny, driver sensibility was coming along, and young guys were building these traditional cars on very low budgets, and that appealed to us because we fit that description perfectly. We wanted to have a suede car with wide white walls and steely wheels, but we wanted to do something that was also a little bit different, because everybody had really taken to the red steely phase, and we didn't really subscribe to having something that everyone else did. So we took a Rat Fink sticker and had paint matched to that color, and that's why the truck has Rat Fink green steely wheels on it. And now, close to 15 years later, she's just one of my favorite things. So many memories. I've been so many places with it. Took it to both of my high school proms. Thankfully, my dates both appreciated that. And countless hours on the dry lakes in El Mirage and Muroc. driven it up to Bonneville. It's been part of the Thacker and Shine Dry Lakes racing team. And yeah, just can't have enough fun with it. So my dad and I are scheming after we get the Model A done. What are we going to do next? What's its next phase going to look like?
And then what about the van?
The van is also a cool story.
That's a very killer van.
Thank you. It's a 73 E100 Econoline short van. No windows on the side, as was very popular in the late 60s and all through the 70s. That was my brother's car, and my brother is 4 years my junior, and when it came time to buy a hot rod, again, money being an issue and style and everything else, nobody was really doing panel vans. And this was probably, it had to have been 08, 09 maybe. And that was another phase of traditional hot rodding that hadn't really been re-explored again. So we intended to use it as a delivery van, which it is very useful for. We continue to use it as that. And he bought it on eBay for I think like $500 or so, and like doubled or tripled the amount of money for the shipping. So came out here from Texas and thinking that, Texas cars are usually dry and usually perfect. Well, this thing looked great. The whole body was just dry and just wonderful. They pulled up the shag carpeting and found that the RV vent in the roof had been left open for a number of years and completely Swiss cheesed out the floor like you wouldn't believe. So what was thought to be a very dry car, and it was on the outside, ended up requiring them to fabricate an entirely new floor for it. And if you've ever had one of these, you know that the floor is corrugated just like a pickup truck. Yeah. So it's got essentially a steel bed that's longer than any long bed on the planet. So they had a brand new floor made for it, corrugated and all, and painstakingly hand trimmed everything, cut it out, and welded in a brand new floor. After that, the interior got done, and then it got painted, and she's just really a lot of fun to drive. I enjoy the 302 with a 2-barrel. It doesn't make all kinds of power, but with the 9-inch Ford and everything, she gets up and moves, and it's got a 3 on the tree. And if you've never driven one of those, man, they're a gas. So
that's what I learned on.
Yeah, and if you can drive a 3 on the tree, I'm pretty much sure you can learn to drive anything manual.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of fun. The truck's an automatic. It still has an automatic. The Model A's got a Hurst 4-speed in it, and just all kinds of goodies. So it's nice to be able to have assembled a little collection of cars, and my new wife is nothing but supportive of it. In fact, she's purchased a lot of the cars that are making that, or the parts that are making that Model A possible. So I feel pretty lucky, in case you can't tell.
Have you had any other projects?
No, not really. The projects that I've had really are small ones. I like vintage Schwinn's, as you guys have seen, and those are sort of just fun little simple projects. My dad's on a real big mini bike kick right now, so he's got... Next time we'll do the interview over at his pad. He's got a great garage too. So his projects lately have been mini bikes, and we're threatening to round out the stable with a 3-wheeler dune cycle. If you guys have ever seen one of those, it's got a lawnmower engine in the back, 2 wheels on an axle, and then 1 single wheel in the front, and it's got a fiberglass bucket seat, much like you think of an old carnival ride, and it's just the baddest mofo on the planet. So we're gonna probably build that sucker up and paint it in metal flake something, and go out there and putt around with it. But yeah, he's on this mini bike kick right now. And then we're always dreaming about what the next one is. I've collected umpteen parts as you look around here that relate to my loves of drag racing and midget racing and everything else that my dad ever exposed me to. And now, as you get older, you discover other forms of it. And I just want to continue seeing racing and drive a little Model A around. And my wife really wants a mid-30s Packard hearse. So if you know one of those around, I'm sure there's got to be 10 or so of them, if that, around. So we'll probably be looking for that for a while.
Well, awesome. Let's get back to SANS. You mentioned getting the word out. How are you? Okay, we saw you last weekend at the Street Machine and Muscle Car Nationals.
Right.
How are you going to be, getting the exposure that you want?
Sure.
Like, what do you have coming up? I know that you've got the celebration of collector car appreciation day.
Absolutely.
Was it July 11th?
That's right. Second Friday in July. That's our hobbies holiday. So that's going to be a very in-depth description. So I hope you don't mind waiting while I ramble.
Go for it.
Cool. Over time, the SAN has evolved from something, and then, by the way, the SAN started in 1997. So that predates most people's AOL accounts or Netscape or whatever you might have had at the time. Thus, largely, things were done by phone and fax, if you can believe that. We would basically format our action alert that gave you all the details of the bill's information, and we would either call you about it or fax it to you. Since then, email has obviously become a preferred method, but now we have, again, great opportunities in sharing information more quickly and more simply, and that's through social media. So we have social media accounts. They're generally SEMA SAN or SEMA Action Network, and you can find them very easily on there. And we post every single alert on social media after we've sent that email out. And then obviously everything is cataloged permanently on the website, semasan.com. So we take all this information and we continue to try to find better ways of getting it out there. One method that I have plans on using more in the future is things like video. You can do digital video so easy nowadays. The problem is that I haven't found a method that I'm happy with, so we're going to leave that one for the near future here. In the meantime, folks can visit our Twitter, they can like us on Facebook, and they can also sign up to get the action alerts via email. That is really, really helpful. One thing we had talked about earlier was the forums. I don't think people post this stuff enough on there. I know that we hear about it every now and then, but I think that simply saying, hey, Massachusetts residents, there's this thing coming down the pike. Why don't you get on board? Here's a link. That link will give you everything you need to know. I think that could be more effective. And do you really want to see that coming from SEMA, or do you want to see that coming from the enthusiasts that it affects? The latter.
Right.
So finding a better way for folks to take that step of getting the information however they choose to, and then posting it, I would like to figure out a better way of doing that. But another incredibly effective way is very old school, and that's simply through magazine advertising. We are very, very fortunate that a number of years ago, Source Interlink Media, whom you might know, are publishers for Hot Rod Magazine, Carcraft, Motor Trend, Automobile, Rod and Custom, Street Rodder, Mini Truckin',
right.
all of those different titles, you will see our PSA in there with the Ignited We Stand artwork. And that is incredibly effective. In fact, I think that's probably largely the most effective way we've gotten folks to sign up. And that's simply because month after month after month, they read these magazines and folks find out that there really is this organization that is organizing voices all over the country, and they get involved. So I'd like to think that the ads are fairly successful, but the numbers certainly would prove that. So obviously, if you have a magazine, that's an incredibly valuable thing. A new method that was not much of focus prior to last year was media outlets just like this. I've done a bunch of different interviews with a bunch of different media sources, and I welcome that opportunity because, as you can tell, I really have fun talking about this. It's something that I've always been super passionate about. I just never thought that I would be the guy that would sort of become the face of it, if you will. And I think that the automotive media channels, again with the technology, are so great because we could talk about something that is relative to right now, 2014, and it can hold up 5 years from now. Or we could be talking about something that is only 2014 and is only a distant memory in the future. So I think that with the different combinations of media out there, that's been hugely important to me. So I'm going to continue to, appear on these programs and try to offer good content and let folks know what's going on and how they can be impacted by it and how they can make a difference. Because whether it's news or not, it's going to be news at some point. So folks need to be prepared. So I think those are all incredibly effective methods, but we're a two-way street and we want to hear from our SAN members out there. So get on board, get online, join the cause, and let us know what we could be doing better. We get a lot of compliments on what we do, and that's all well and great, but ultimately we need to know about what the opportunities are more than the threats. We can squash a threat. We know how to do that. What are the opportunities out there to get the word out there? What are we not doing that we could be doing? We're short-staffed, just like anybody. Since the economy took a crash, everybody is short-staffed these days. Everybody is singularly wearing more hats than they ever have had to. And that's because things in America are changing. And as a result, your association that's fighting for you is no different. I can't do it all myself. But that's why if we simply have the resources available, share them. What could we be doing that we're not doing? And I'm always open to constructive criticism.
Well, I think that's a great note to finish this up on. So, again, social media, go to the website, sign up. It's just an email, That's it. And it does pertain to you. So do some copy and paste and take 5 minutes to write a letter or write an email and
write a draft and then look at it the next day.
That's it.
It only takes a couple minutes, And so thanks for talking with us, Colby. This was really good.
Good. Well, I hope we can do it again.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff we didn't get to, so we're going to have to do it again.
Good. I'm glad.
All right. So until next time, my name's William.
This is Davis and
Colby Martin.
all right.
Thanks, guys.
But there'll be no more crying of you.
Hello, podcast fans. Adam Carolla here. I'm leading the fight against patent trolls who are threatening this medium. It's not about me. It's about the podcast you're listening to right now. If I go down, this show could be next. So visit fundanything.com/patent troll for more information on how you can keep podcasting alive. Thank you and mahalo.